Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Elise. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I have a video showing a fun watercolor technique that you can use if you don't want to color in your images perfectly. Here is a look at the projects that we are going to make today. We're going to make this card twice because I had so much fun doing the painting. I hope that you enjoy, and let's jump into the video. On my desk here, I have the new Tender Blooms combo and the Tender Thoughts stamp set. These are both new from Waffle Flower. I'm going to go ahead and use my MISTI to stamp that big bloom cluster onto a piece of vellum. I'm going to be using some VersaMark ink, and I am going to use I've used my embossing buddy on that vellum already, so that I won't get any stick. And I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that down. And I'm using a cloth just to make sure I get a really good impression. And I'm going to heat emboss these blooms using Hero Art's white embossing powder. This is just going to create a really fun see-through element on our card. And I thought I would just go ahead and get this step out of the way at the start. I also do this process twice since I am making 2 cards today. So I'm just coating that vellum with the powder, making sure that I get all of my stamped areas. This piece of vellum is 6 by 6. This is an oversized stamp. So it'd be great if you wanted to use the complete image on a 5x7 card, but I end up cutting this down just a little bit to use on a traditional A2. I'm just going to go ahead and heat set that vellum. Because the vellum is really thin, you do want to make sure that your heat gun is really, really hot when you bring it to your paper. So I let it warm up for about a minute, and then I move it around a lot to make sure that I don't horribly warp the vellum or melt anything down. Once all of that embossing powder is melted, then we can move on to the next step. I'm just making sure I get all of those areas. You can tell when your heat embossing powder isn't melted because it won't be shiny. I'm going to take the coordinating die and die cut this out, just using some washi tape to hold it in place while I run it through my Gemini Junior die cut machine. I did let this cool off for a second before I ran it through my die cut machine. Like I said, this is a very large stamp set, but it's really nice that you, if you get the combo, you can get the coordinating die for this. I always like to have the coordinating dies on hand. Like I said, I'm just going to run this through my Gemini Junior machine, and then we can move on to the next step. So for the coloring today, I brought out my Daniel Smith watercolor palette. If you want to look, here are the colors that I have. Feel free to pause if you want to look over them. There's a number of empty wells in my case here. So I have room to grow, but I have a lot of really, really beautiful colors that I enjoy using. This is very sped up, about 4 times. So you can see that on my watercolor paper, which is Fabriano Artistico watercolor paper, that I have used a pencil and traced that die. So that way I can see exactly where the areas are that I need to color. So the nice thing about my watercolor palette here, it is, it's one of those Bulletproof watercolor palettes. I bought it off Amazon. I'll link it down below if I can still find it. But there is a surface that you can mix on. So that's really, really nice. For this first floral image, I wanted to do kind of warmer tones. So I'm using a warmer green and some yellows, some oranges, and some reds. And then for my second watercolor image, I use a lot of cool tones. So it's really fun. You can get a lot of different looks. If you're like me, doing really intense watercoloring on small floral images is really time consuming and a little bit intimidating sometimes. So this is a way that you can use those sets and use your watercolors, but not feel like you have to watercolor the image in perfectly. So I thought this was a fun technique that I would share with you guys. So as you can see, I'm just going along on the side. I am doing some mixing. I got smart, and you'll see this on the second panel. I laid down water on my paper first, which I highly suggest, just so that you get a little bit more organic movement to your watercolors. For most of this, it's really me trying to manipulate the colors to blend together. So adding in a lot of extra water. Just going ahead and filling in the last few areas on this panel, and then we will move on to the other panel. While you watch me paint, I thought I would answer a question I get asked a lot. So a lot of you guys know that I don't have a craft room. My husband and I live in a very small home. And so I craft out of our dining room, and I get a lot of questions about storage and how I've organized things. And I feel like I've finally gotten to a place where I have a good system. By the way, after I do my watercoloring on both of these panels, I go ahead and just heat set them just to speed up my process. You could definitely just leave these aside and let them dry for a few hours, but I needed to get a move on. So, and you can see here how this is going to fit over. And I just run this panel with the dye through my die cut machine to cut it out as well. So back to what I was previously talking about. I get a lot of questions about use of space, and especially because I don't have a lot of space, and keeping things tidy. I fully admit I do not keep things tidy. It never looks tidy. We don't ever eat in that area. We don't eat in the dining room. So I think if we ate there, I'd keep it more tidy. But let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a tour of how I organize my space. That would be helpful to you to see. I'd happily do that for you. So like I said, on this one, I laid down water first, and I'm using cool tone colors. So something a little bit different from what I did in the first example. So I'm using a number of different blues and greens and purples and some pinks as well. I get a little bit more of a teal vibe off of this one, where on the other one, it's definitely that yellow orange. Growing up, yellow, orange, red, that was like my favorite color combination. So, and I think that it's really funny now as an adult, I definitely prefer cool tone colors. Because I pre-wet this panel, it is warping a little bit. So I do use some washi tape to hold it down to my little cutting board guy. You could use a hardboard here as well. By the way, the watercolor brushes that I'm using are Royal Langnickel. I think that's the brand. They're the Zen brushes. And this is still the Fabriana Artistico, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, watercolor paper. All of the supplies to my videos are always linked down below. And if I have an accompanying blog post over on my blog as well. If you're watching this right when it goes live at the beginning of December, then we are celebrating the Waffle Flower new release. And so there is a giveaway always associated with that blog hop. So be sure to head over to the blog and leave a comment so you can enter in to win that giveaway. And if you are watching this over on my blog, thank you so much for watching this. Be sure to hop over to YouTube if you aren't subscribed or want to see more from me. So just adding in that last bit of color, because I added that water at the beginning, I do end up with like a pool of color, but I do pick that up with a paper towel. And of course, I also heat set this with my heat tool. So now I've got all my die cut pieces. I've got the 2 watercolor pieces and the stamped images on vellum that are heat embossed with white. So you can see just how those are going to overlay. This is really, really fun. This is definitely a technique I will use again. Because it's really hard to hide glue behind vellum, I made little frames using the A2 layers dies. So I'm using the largest and then the 3rd largest dies and kind of cutting little frames so that I have a place to hide the glue. And you'll see how that comes along. So I go ahead and run these through my die cut machine. I've got a piece of yellow paper for that warm toned and a piece of dark teal paper for that cool toned piece. So just going to go ahead and tape this down, run it through my die cut machine, and then I will move my little frame pieces over to my teal paper. I'm also going to go ahead and save the insides of these die cuts because I will use them when I do my sentiment stamping. So now I've got my frame and I've got some liquid glue. I'm just running along that glue tube along the edges so that I can glue down the vellum right on the edges. So there won't be any glue really on the inside of the floral images. There are a few places where there's some solid like floral centers, and I hid a tiny bit of glue behind those to adhere it to the watercolor, but not very much. So once I have that down, I'm going to run my glue again in the same area right along the edge, and then glue my watercolor piece down so that it is behind the vellum. So the order is frame, then the vellum, then the watercolor piece. Just laying this over as best as I can. It ends up being a smidge offset, but I also think that that's really fun too. There are a lot of different ways that you could position these. You could do it totally offset, perfectly straight on, however you really want to do it. I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiments now onto those scrap pieces. These are from the Tender Thoughts stamp set. And I'm going to use VersaMark ink because I am going to heat emboss these with white heat embossing powder, the same powder that I used earlier. Just using my magic powder bag here to make sure the embossing powder only sticks where I want it, and VersaMark ink, which is my favorite embossing ink. And actually, I think it's the only embossing ink I've really ever used that wasn't just like an oxide ink or a pigment ink. Once I have those stamped down and heat embossed, I'm just going to go ahead and take my paper trimmer and cut these down into little strips. So you can see I just needed to cut off a little bit from each edge and then cut it off from the main piece of paper. I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same for the yellow piece of cardstock as well. The yellow cardstock, by the way, comes from Simon Says Stamp, and this teal comes from Gina K. Once I have those cut out, I'm I can really start my assembly. So I'm just going to cut off all of that overhang. This ended up being like a total mess all over my desk by the time that I finished cutting both of these off. I feel like I was like finding little pieces forever. I may need to do the Jennifer Maguire trick and keep a little hand vacuum in the dining room. That would probably be really, really handy because I could have just vacuumed these up instead of trying to find them all over everywhere because they flew everywhere. So I cut the yellow and I also cut the teal. And then I'm just going to add some glue to the frame and to this large watercolor piece. And I'm using that same liquid glue. And then I'm going to adhere it down onto an A2 size card base. I make my card bases out of Nina Classic Crest Solar White 110 pound. Gluing both of these on the teal and the yellow panel. And I do place something heavy on these to let them adhere really well. Just using some foam tape scraps here to adhere on the sentiments. There's kind of like a perfect place for the sentiment above that daisy on the right hand side and on the other side of that kind of long grass piece, I guess. And once I have these down, that really completes the cards for today. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. Again, if you're watching this right when it goes live, be sure if you aren't over on my blog to go over there to enter to win the giveaway. And if you are new here, I'd love to have you subscribe. In a minute, there'll be some cards on the screen, some other videos of mine that you can watch if you want to keep watching videos from me. I hope that you all have a wonderful holiday season, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you so much.